Now let me clarify up front that the Bible doesn't explicitly mention masturbation. However, there are passages often interpreted to address related themes like sexual purity, self-control, and honoring our bodies as temples of the Holy Spirit. Let's unpack this together. Diving into the scriptures. Let's start with Matthew 5:28, where Jesus says, "Anyone who looks at a woman with lust has already committed adultery with her in his heart." Now, what's happening here? Jesus is elevating the moral standard. He's asking us not just to avoid outward sin, but to examine our hearts and minds. Lustful intent, the kind that might accompany masturbation, is seen as the root issue. It's about aligning not just actions, but thoughts, with spiritual purity. Next, we have 1 Corinthians 6:18-20, which says, "Flee from sexual immorality. Do you not know that your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit within you?" Think about that imagery for a moment, your body as a temple. If we accept that, it's an invitation to honor ourselves deeply, not as vessels of guilt or shame, but as sacred spaces for God's presence. Actions like masturbation, especially if tied to lust or addiction, might not reflect that sacredness. Paul is urging believers to glorify God through their choices, including how they treat their bodies. Now, Galatians 5:19-21 brings in a broader perspective. Paul lists the works of the flesh, including sexual immorality, impurity, and sensuality. While these terms aren't directly about masturbation, some interpret them to include it. The key idea here is avoiding behaviors that distract us from spiritual growth or create inner turmoil. Finally, in 1 Thessalonians 4:3-5, Paul writes, "This is the will of God, your sanctification, that you abstain from sexual immorality and learn to control your own body in holiness and honor." Here's a powerful takeaway. Sanctification, or growing closer to God, involves self-control. The more we discipline ourselves, the more we cultivate holiness, reflecting the divine image within us. Why this matters spiritually. Now, let's talk about why people see this as important. Avoiding actions like masturbation is not about repression, but about redirecting energy. Think about it. Sexual energy is one of the most potent forces we have. When we conserve and channel it into prayer, meditation, or purposeful living, it's believed to enhance our spiritual clarity and strength. Some traditions call this transmutation, where physical desires are transformed into spiritual energy. Imagine the power of taking that energy and using it to fuel creativity, deep prayer, or acts of service. Practical outcomes. Let's connect this to something many of us want: abundance and prosperity. Here's the logic some people see. 1. Self-discipline builds character. By learning to control desires, you become more focused and intentional in all areas of life. 2. Purity aligns you with divine energy. Many believe that spiritual purity attracts blessings, whether it's peace, clarity, or material prosperity. 3. Avoiding distractions keeps you on track. When we avoid behaviors that lead to guilt or shame, we stay more aligned with our goals and values. Ultimately, this is a deeply personal topic. Some might see masturbation as natural and harmless, while others view it as a barrier to spiritual growth. What's most important is that we approach this with honesty, reflection, and a desire to align our actions with our values. Ask yourself,